For those of you who haven't had a chance to connect with Broadcom, my name is Jim Broniec. I am the technical director overseeing what we now refer to as our endpoint management technologies. You probably know them as Altiris. What's really exciting from my perspective with 86RU2 is that we're now taking NDM, or modern device management capabilities, and starting to introduce them in a very consistent process. And this is the first time we've gone about first taking a new architecture and a new technology, bringing it into technical preview in one release update, getting feedback from the community as they started to use these technologies, and then provided accessibility to this new framework in an upcoming release update. And based on the feedback we've gotten from our early testers and our early adopters of this architecture, they really like this opportunity to have feedback into the loop. As a former Altiris guy, one of the things that I loved about our former, I guess not former, I guess it's more of our brand philosophy, and that's listening to customers, hearing what they're looking for out of our tools, and then making our tools do those things, right? It's a crazy concept that I think some vendors have gotten away from because they're so sure that they want to show you and kind of overwhelm you with the number of features and capabilities that they're adding to a tool that you may or may not use, I don't know, 10 or 20% of. And this has become more rampant over time as these lightweight cloud architectures allow us just to take these microservices and throw them at a solution and say that I've checked that box. If you've been using our tools, which most of you have been for many years, you'll understand that there's more nuance to that from our perspective. We selfishly want to make it easier for you guys to come into our console, do your job, and then go up and do your job. We want our console to not be the barrier toward you, number one, having access to information, getting access to information, or connecting information to the things that you care about and the things that you need. So those are some of the defining guiding principles that we've made in this recent release. What else is fun about being a part of Broadcom? Broadcom is a different business than Symantec. I'll show you some of the ways when we start talking about later on in our presentation about some of the ways we can now provide access to you guys to understand our support information, live state information about the product as changes are occurring. I do also want to, if and when we have time during Q&A, to address some of the challenges that January's Microsoft updates have presented, not only us, but some of our VPN partners and other IIS platform services. And we'll talk through some of the ways that if you've rolled out some of those updates that we can maybe help you resolve those. We've got some workarounds to talk through there. That's a situation in progress. We're actually having support conversations directly with Microsoft to help them better understand the scope of the issue and provide guidance to them based on our customer feedback on ways to remedy the issue specifically within our task service architecture. But that all being said, I'm jumping all over the place, and I apologize for that. It's a little early where I'm currently homesteading in Chicago, where it's dark very late into the day, or very early into the day, and it stays dark very late into the morning. So that all being said, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, and what we'll start doing is taking a look at what's new in 86RU2 and some of the new enhancements we're making to Ghost. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. And then we'll do that, and then we'll do that. And I think that should have worked. Usually with Zoom, my biggest problem is getting the audio and video to work. It'll work on my end, there's some other end that won't work. So I think we're doing okay at the moment, which is great. This is kind of our loose agenda. I do want to talk about what's new in this recent release. I also want to talk about what's new in RU9 of Ghost Solution Suite. We have not really communicated a lot about some of the things we're doing with Ghost Solution Suite. We've been very busy working with a lot of our customers who interact directly with cloud and cloud tenants. Yeah, I know it's crazy to think about this, but a lot of the cloud tenants that you see deployed in persistent manners are actually built using Ghost. So it's kind of ironic because people think about Ghost Solution Suite and its legacy deployment solution architecture, and they think this stuff is still being used. That's amazing. But no, we actually empower some pretty significant parts of the cloud architecture in 4 of the major providers. Amazon has been the most vocal of recent note. And we're using the Ghost executable to help kind of expand and build out complex architectures in a cloud modality. What gives Ghost this capability and this resilience is that we've been working with some of the primary cloud vendors to expand the capabilities of that API, primarily around handling Amazon S3 buckets and being able to rapidly deploy chunks of operating system deployments to those segments using our architecture. That's also a separate business line for Broadcom. Broadcom likes it when you can diversify the business because it gives them an excuse to give you more money to invest in the products, which is something we're trying to always do from a product perspective. That all being said, I'm again jumping all over the place, and I apologize. Slide decks are good for this because they keep you on the rails. 86RE2 shipped yesterday. Here are some of the supported additional platforms. Important to understand and note, we finally got deployment support in for our Ubuntu friends who've been wanting some task functionality within the Ubuntu framework. So that's exciting there. We've also got inbound Windows 11 certified support, including Windows PE support there. With the new PE architecture now, what we're doing is we're extending our capabilities to manage devices over cloud-enabled management. If you're familiar with what we added from a capability perspective back in RE1, we gave you the ability to start executing commands in the PE architecture over SEM. Well, now we're giving you some file server support in your SEM architecture so that we can start to front load some of our imaging capabilities there. We'll talk more about that at a later point, but understand that these additional platforms give us some greater flexibility in the deployment framework on that side of things. From a platform support and accessibility side of things, we did add browser support for the latest releases of Windows and Mac Edge releases and Chrome releases. So we're certified in both platforms and both applications for visibility in both the traditional console and the endpoint management workspaces or next-gen console. We've also made some important and very needed enhancements to the email, ADAL, and OAuth capabilities inside of Workflow. We're looking at doing some UI revisions, hopefully in one of our upcoming RUs, once I get the blessing from product management that we got the money to do those things. So keep an eye out for that. We've also added support for Cng certificates as part of this release. More and more of how we handle things in both the MDM space and the mobile space, which we'll talk more about later, more and more of that will be certificate-based or use certificates as an authentication modality for a number of reasons. Number one, customers are starting to slowly but deliberately shift away from AD as an authentication modality, which is a new change for us and more importantly for our platform. What are some of the reasons there? Some of our customers are trying to decouple their reliance on Microsoft's architectures so that they could take advantage of cloud-based authentication providers to start to give them better organizational flexibility. At least that's what they're calling it. But that all being said, I think that if I take my engineer hat off and I just talk technical person to technical person, what customers are telling us is that when they start to move some of their authentication components, which is traditionally an NTDS service that is handled by your internal Active Directory architecture. This is a classic X500 architecture running LDAP services. So traditionally we have 2 or 3 data center what we would call domain controllers. For some reason, I couldn't remember that word. And domain controllers are great because they're resilient. They've got basically all an X500 databases is a database. And a localized copy of that database meant that when users are authenticating against the library, it's a very quick and easy process. But when you move that authentication modality up to the cloud, if I have connectivity challenges to the cloud, or if I have internet issues, then my ability to authenticate myself starts to degrade, which is a real problem when you're trying to run multi-level services in a complex architecture. So that all being said, customers are starting to lean more on that certificate authentication modality, specifically the SEM certificate authentication modality, to start to authenticate and to bridge some of these consistency gaps that they're seeing on authentication. So we are looking, Broadcom, as you probably know, has a pretty big investment in identity management. We're actually a part now of the identity management group inside of Broadcom. Broadcom sees our user management capabilities as a highly strategic capability that they want to expand in other parts of the portfolio. From our side of things, on the Symantec management products or endpoint management products side of the house, is if we look at ITMS as a series of about 25 or 26 tools under a suite umbrella, we have this opportunity now to effectively look at another 150 potential Swiss Army knife tools that we can add into the ITMS platform from these shared service providers inside of our product family. And the question we're asking customers is, effectively, do you need a larger Phillips head screwdriver, or are you okay with the one we have today? And in some of those conversations, right, we're starting to now deliberately add new capabilities. So on that side of things, I'll talk more about that when we talk more about what we're doing with MDM. But a few other key changes that on the UI side, I think are helpful to understand. We're exposing a lot more of the localized agent detailed data, including some of the computer model and manufacturer information inside of the agent UI for your at desk side technicians. We're also including some OS information, as well as last boot and current user information versus primary user data, which is traditionally you'd see in this pane. And the deployment solution side, as I talked about, we're now giving customers the ability to host and manage their package servers inside a cloud, the SEM or DMZ location of your architecture. What it also then allows me to do is, since COVID, right, we've got a lot more of our user populations dying in over SEM. So having that front-loaded capability to take all my file level transactions, whether that's patch management or managed software delivery policies, having all that front end into my DMZ means I'm not pulling out that internal WAN and LAN traffic. So it's a much more efficient model. Moreover, with iPXE and our capabilities there, we can now bridge our PE environments and front load them out there in the cloud so that we can do cloud-based image provisioning through the platform using our architecture. Additional changes that we've added include the ability to capture and handle standalone inventory with signing and encryption. So again, as we look at giving customers choice and options in how they connect and authenticate, and I'll mention here some of our competitors in the space say they do standalone isolated inventory, but when you run them through specific, let's say, DoD checklists, there are some critical failures in meeting some of the requirements that are tied to NIST standards, for example, here in the United States. There's our National Institute of Standards and Technology that we're bound by as a platform provider of those types of services. Also, HTTPS native support for those standalone inventory packages. And another big change is Cve Based Patching inside a native to patch management. Now, we've had Cve Based patching and vulnerability management capabilities. If you are a SEPM ITMS customer, you've had that shared capability between your SEPM and your patch services, right? Because we can build this sandboxing approach where if you don't have these third-party updates or you don't have these patches, or if your SEP agent is not at this specific version, we're going to isolate you until you get upgraded and get these specific patches installed, and then we'll allow you to ingress into the network. A lot of that being automatic within the 8.6 platform. So these are I think valuable changes for customers that we've added to the tools. On the MDM side, this is pretty exciting. So here are some of the new easy buttons, or widgets as we call them, inside the EPM Workspaces framework or the next gen console, depending on your comfort level. But what's exciting here is with this release now, we're giving customers the ability to create and configure their own MDM profiles and payloads associated to those profiles. I can, of course, manage all of my policies from an MDM perspective, including app distribution, app installation, also things like task execution. I can now leverage that framework for reaching out and is initiating those execution commands. MDM is a much lighter framework too, from that perspective, as it doesn't have as many hooks. So when we look at how do we solve the BYOD problem, MDM gives us an isolated way to deliver similar service offerings to our internal customers without having to maybe give them full access to the architecture or enroll their devices more completely within the platform. So out of the box, you'll have the ability to import applications into the common software catalog and to initiate them via the MDM side of the house. MDM inventory gathering from, let's say, the software and hardware side will live in a separate hive under the MDM framework side. I'd like to get feedback from you all on that experience as well. Here's some of the views around managing certificates. We want to try and make this UI easy to both import, manage, and start to track now some of the complexity that's starting to unfurl in our certificate landscapes. Here are some of the certificate types that we support in this first official release here. Here are some of the configuration options inside that MDM server. What's important to note about this new MDM middleware server architecture is that it will run on Ubuntu or it will run on Red Hat. It will run on nothing else. So it's our first piece of middleware architecture that is natively Nix in flavor. We have options on SEM, right, to build a Linux distribution, but we've always had Windows as an option. So changes in the landscape, right? And when we look at the types of payloads we're delivering with MDM, a lot of them just suit a Nix framework far more simply and more efficiently, quite honestly. Is this a sign of things to come? I can't really answer that question. But I think that if you look at where, at the 10,000 foot view, right, where we're going as organizations, the complexity of our environments is changing pretty rapidly. Right now we have some tangential oversight and responsibility for cloud architectures that we were told were just going to be specific application solutions that were deployed in our businesses. So how we start to provide oversight and visibility into those things is one of the key questions that over the upcoming release updates we're hoping to solve. So that being said, I will quickly move on and show you a few of the payload and profile screens. There's so much here. In feedback from customers, we were told, please leave as much of this information available to us because some parts of our business might want this, that, or the other. So we're going to make this as open and as available as possible. Important to note, I can add profiles here, and I can also then add specific targets inside the platform within the MDM framework and set those up and tie and link them to an application per se. Speaking of applications, we can add them very easily into the catalog. From a traditional console perspective, here's how I'll walk through those specific sequences in terms of understanding and then building policies and scheduling things like software inventory or profile inventory or security lists of authorized users, those kinds of things, or some of the data that we can gather within the platform. On the Go Solution Suite side, we've added, of course, a number of additional platforms. As I mentioned, over the last few years, we've really fleshed out our Nix capabilities in the Ghost realm. Of course, we still fully support and are certified on Windows and Debian today. UEFI support has been expanded. We just updated the Affirm 2 release on WinPE in support of some changes that were security related. On the Go Solution Suite side, we've also now got grouping capabilities in the platform. We've added some templated location and user related information now that can be populated. This is a part of our response to COVID for GSS customers who are starting to build more architecture there and want to more accurately delineate who has what and where. A few other enhancements, we're expanding some of the S3 bucket size supportability in our latest release. I did want to quickly talk about accessing Broadcom resources and how to get that stuff. When you go to the Broadcom support portal, it's a little overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff here. We're going to be in the Symantec side of the equation here. Once you click the Symantec link, you'll see all your different information that's tied to your account, your open support cases, what licenses and SLF files you have access or need access to will be available here. Also, product information, all of our support documentation, what's new in the product, all that information is right here, including your MSI downloads or executable downloads for different packages that you have ownership of, and training and education. Here's kind of what your support portal looks like, just at a high level. Here's what that download for ITMS looks like. If you got GSS entitlements, you'll see them here as well. Our new learning program at Broadcom allows you to either set up enrollment or require enrollment for folks that want to learn about our 8X platforms. You, of course, can do instructor-led training. Most of that is currently being done over Zoom. We also have that course catalog and our on-demand content that you can have access to. With that being said, that's my time. I will now hand it back over to the Zitac team. Guys?
Thank you, James. I don't know, can you hear me? Yeah,
yes, sir.
Perfect. So good to be with you. I'm so totally sorry for missing the introductions. I don't know what happened there with our technology. I just couldn't connect. But I'm here, so better late than never. I just wanted to say, welcome, James. Thanks for the presentations. I hope, and I was hoping to see some questions from all of you that we could ask James now when we have him in the room. So just send over. Johannes, as always, you're the first one. One question here, James, for you. Do you know if the built-in join domain component is working in a SEM deployment scenario? That's a good one.
So great question. There are some prerequisites required for enabling PE and more importantly, imaging over SEM. We have to make sure that our architecture will allow us to transact some of that data and information point within the framework, right? And there may be some holes to poke in our DMZ and our firewall to allow these things to occur. If you think about the ports and protocols information, we've expanded some of that to include some of that information. We'll also be producing a white paper, hopefully within the next month, on best practices for SEM-based imaging, and that may even be a topic of conversation in an upcoming webinar that we do. So keep an eye out for that.
Another question actually I got internally from one of our team members is what's going on with the how to say cloud-based version and moving to the cloud.
Right. So
that you're working with.
Yeah. So great question. And when it comes to a cloud-based offering, if I'm completely transparent, and I don't know how many people are aware of this, our endpoint protection cloud tools were originally Altiris cloud. But within the Symantec business, right, security took all the priority. So when you go about rolling out your SES clients, that's actually legacy / next-gen Altiris console information. So to answer your question, we are in the process, right? One of the challenges with our architecture is that customers will not allow us to, number one, introduce a new agent. It's going to be one agent, right? If you think about the things that we had to kind of creatively solve for SEM and for actually building in backward compatibility for our legacy frameworks, right? Believe it or not, if you were to take a legacy 7.1 agent and wake it up and connect it to your architecture, assuming your IP address and naming conventions or DNS routing allows that agent to connect to your traditional 8.6 architecture, it will provide inventory, software management functionality, and patching for that legacy 7X client. So this is the heritage of what we have to carry forward. If you look at the Zitac desktop, right, and you think about these big ships in the water, right, we have to move them very slowly and very and also quickly at the same time. So to answer your question, the framework for SES-C is actually Altiris technology. When and if we start to offer desktop capabilities, it's probably not very soon. And here's why. And I think this is actually a conversation we can have at some point. I don't want to get too in depth with it, but if you think about the way that your CMDB works inside your ITMS framework, every time you capture full inventory, Hans, you're replacing about 80% of the data in that database. And really, one of the challenges our customers, I'm sure your customers tell you, is that we have complexity in our cloud architectures. And what's crazy is these cloud vendors are raising the cost for our customers and your customers to interact with them. And customers are looking to be more nimble with their cloud architecture. So from our perspective, we think it's more prudent for us to spend the development dollars and the resource and engineering in giving customers the nimble flexibility to bounce cloud vendor to cloud vendor, because that's what CIOs and CEOs are saying they want from me. They want the ability to fast switch so that when Amazon comes back with a 3 to 5x cost on services, they can very quickly switch over to Google or switch over to Amazon or switch over to Microsoft, depending on where they are from a nimbleness perspective. I'm sorry, that's a very long answer to the question. I'll stop.
But what I've seen though is that some of our customers actually have moved or are moving to the cloud with their environment. So they're doing this themselves. So, and it works great.
Absolutely.
Actually.
Yeah. As far as putting our stuff up there, absolutely. And if you got a situation where you're not heavily pinged on data IO in your cloud agreement, it can be very efficient, right? And there is some elasticity to that model, and it gives me a ton of flexibility. So absolutely, we do support that modality completely.
Great. I have another question here from Simon. Will RU6 drop support for legacy OS such as Windows 7 and Server 2008?
That is not going to be a decision made by us. That's going to be a Microsoft decision. Now, what I can tell you is that we have several key customers that have paid Microsoft for extended support. If you're one of those customers that continues to pay them for that annual maintenance, you can then pay us an additional $20,000 in annual maintenance, and we will provide you that extended support ability within the platform. So you can reach out to Hans, and Hans can reach out to me, and we can get that situated.
Yeah, so I hope that was an answer. Another feature request. Let me see. This is a long one. In the filter expressions of value field for reports, you cannot type and search for the database fields. In filter management, which is almost the same GUI, you can do it. It would be great to have the same function in the report builder. I think you can read it as well in the chat.
Yes, and I am reading it. Yeah. So when we talk about type and search for the database fields, if you're in the, I think you can if you're in the filter results viewer. For those of you who are not aware, when you expand the optional capability inside your filter view, right, you get this little icon that looks like a piece of paper with a pie chart in it. That's your filter results viewer. What that exposes is a full list of all of the available values that you can essentially include out of our inventory stack for those resources, and you can check the box for them, and then they auto-populate on the report, so you can determine and decide whether you want that in your finalized report. That WYSIWYG editor is a much simpler way to kind of combine those data elements together. I would start there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Great answers. Thank you, James. I didn't have any more for you at this time, but maybe it comes up later in the chat again, and then we can come back to this if we have time to it. Okay?
Sounds good. Thanks, Hans.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So I'm pondering here, should I go ahead and show me my presentation because I have spent hours of preparing it, or should I just jump to the things you're really interested in? And Kenny, how do you feel? Are you prepared to take over and talk a bit about workflow and decisions?
Sure, it's up to you basically, Hans. If you want to show the PowerPoint, just go ahead, else I'm ready to show decisions.
Yeah, it feels that I missed my spot. So actually, I want you to start up. I think that's a really good idea. I know that you have some, and I know that you have a lot of information that's actually of interest for many people. So I would really like to do that. And I can finish up and maybe show you part of my slides at least, or some of the slide, and talk about maybe the next time when we meet, or hopefully meet. So I hand it over to you, Kenny.
Thank you, Hans. Yeah, so before I begin, how much time do I have so I don't run over?
I think that you have, let me see, we have 2 hours in total, and now it's 2:36, so I would give you at least 40 minutes.
40 minutes,
Or
great.
maximum 40 minutes.
All right.
Or 50 minutes, actually. So you get some extra time because I was not on time, so I lost it.
Usually I want to keep within the time frame, so that might be nice.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so my name is Cng Giegersson. I work as a consultant for Zitac Consulting. And I have a long background in Altiris and the Altiris products. I've been working with them for almost 15 years now. Lately, I've transitioned, or lately, the last 7 years, I have been working with process automations with tools like Workflow and Decisions. Today, I will show you a demo of Decisions from the viewpoint of someone who has been developing in Workflow previously. So if you have no previous experience, some comparisons I will make will not maybe make sense to you, but I hope you get the essence of what I'm showing you and what you can do with the platform. Before I go ahead and start the demo, I would like to talk to you about why we on Zitac choose to work with Decisions. And as it stands, we have a handful of no-code automation and process tools in our offering on Zitac. And that's products like Service Point, Power Automate, Onify, Workflow, of course, and others. And all these different platforms, they fit their specific use cases or audiences. Some of them are focusing more on like end users and non-technical people doing stuff, and some are more of a technical nature. There's only one platform or two right now, or that can do anything that the other platforms can do, and more, of course, and that is Workflow and Decisions. Workflow is not easier than any other of the other products. In fact, you need to be quite technical to develop your processes in the tool. So the target audience is the more technical user with some technical knowledge and maybe scripting skills. That's the main focus, from my point of view, for the developer in Workflow. We have been very happy with Workflow over the years, and we have, well, most, I would say, of our Workflow customers are Altiris customers. Where we implemented mostly IT-related process and many times Altiris specific processes. But we also used Workflow as a pure business process tool, where we were focusing on maybe the main business of a company rather than only the IT parts. And we really liked this way of working with the product to not only use it to small technical implementations, but implement it in the whole companies. What we saw with Workflow is that the platform is getting quite aged, and with the end of life announcement of Service Desk, we were worried that what the future might look like for Workflow. So we started looking around for other tools to add to our portfolio. What we looked for was a tool that would be quicker and easier than traditional coding. That's what we get with Workflow today, but more dynamic and powerful than the traditional BPMs, the business process management platforms and automation tools. And the last thing we looked for, but not the least, was it need to be a product that is fun to work with. It shouldn't be cumbersome to work with. It should be quick and yeah, all that stuff. So after evaluating a bunch of tools, that was either too complex and cumbersome or very limited in capabilities, we finally found Decisions. And Decisions is actually founded by the same guys that founded Transparent Logic back in the days. And Transparent Logic later became Symantec Workflow. And the two products, they have quite many similarities, but they're also different in a lot of ways. But the similarities makes it easy to transition. If you developed in Workflow previously, getting started with Decisions is very simple. You will see that all the base functionality you're used to is there, and it works pretty much the same. But also you have a lot of new stuff that really speeds up and help you work developing your processes. And what we also saw with Decisions is that it's more suited for larger implementations, especially when we are starting on focusing on like the main business of a company, where it could be many thousands of users, or maybe even public facing services. We needed a tool that was very efficient and also scalable. Yeah, so that's one of the differences between Workflow Decisions is the scalability, and another difference is who they target. As I told you, Workflow is a really neat visual kind of scripting tools with basically endless possibilities, but it's mainly focused towards the more technical people. Decisions has the same qualities as Workflow. You can still do all that cool stuff that you used to do with Workflow, but it also has it also faces less technical people, so business users, and they could either develop their own simple processes, or you could, as a developer, break out specific parts of flows like business logic, and only give them access to modify that data. So instead of you having a developer going in and changing some values for something that is built into a process, you break that out and put it in a rule or put it in a subflow or something that a less technical person can go in and tweak the numbers or the parameters needed for the process. Decisions actually also flirts a bit with traditional coders and developers, and they do that through their very powerful SDK that lets basically anyone who knows how to write C#, they can create steps in Decisions that other users can use. And they can do that without like deep knowledge into Decisions. They don't need to know the platform very well. They don't need to know much about it. The way the SDK is built is that as long as you can write C#, you can create steps in Decisions. So that's a little background on the difference between the products, and also why we choose to go ahead with Decisions as a new product that we work with. So I'll go right ahead and jump into the console. So let's see, screen. There we go. Should be able to see my screen, I hope. So this is the Decisions portal. This is 100% web-based. So you consume your flows like an end user through the portal if you want to. But the main thing is that this is the place where you develop your processes, create your integrations, the rules, and all that. Before I go further into what you can do with it, I will just tell you real quick that the current version is version 7, and it's hosted on a Windows machine. So the only thing you would need to get started with Decisions is a Windows machine and a SQL server. The SQL server could be a MS SQL server, a Microsoft SQL server, or a PostgreSQL, or you could place it in AWS or Azure. All those are supported. In this last version of version 7, Decision has been converted to use .NET 6. And this is to allow platform-independent C# code to run. So you could run this in a Linux environment, basically. In this version 7, it's not supported though, but in version 8, that will be released in a couple of weeks, they will release a Docker-based installation. So if you're not a huge fan of having Windows servers laying around, you could just fire up a Docker container and all the configuration and stuff is placed in your SQL. For hosting options for the product, you can either run it as a software as a service, so let Decision host it for you and you just get a URL where you log in and start working with your flows. You could run it on-prem, or you could use it in your private cloud, of course, like your AWS or Azure or whatever. So the end user portal that we're currently looking at, that's optional to use. This is basically a place where end users could log on and where you could show your service catalog. You could show them reports on their current flows that are running, like a request or something. You can make this look pretty much whatever way you want it to. A lot of customers we have, they do not actually use this portal because it would introduce another portal to their environment. So often we embed decisions forms or reports or stuff like that into another existing portal. It could be a SharePoint, or it could be, yeah, basically anything. Maybe you have a service management system, you could include it there. So it's very dynamic on how you can consume these forms. So if I switch over to the studio, if you have the permissions, you are allowed to click the studio, and here is where the magic happens. This is where you develop all your stuff. Before I go into how you create the flows and what it looks like, I will show you a very simple example and since we're having an Altiris user group here, I will show you an integration with Altiris, of course. So I stole a flow from a customer. I stole it with permissions though, so that's fine. And this is a very simple flow that we use to extend functionality in the SMP console. If I right click any computer, I'll actually pick my computer here so we can see that something is actually happening. We added a custom right click option called Manage Software Filters. When we click that, we actually open up a decisions form that basically lists all the folders and filters from a specific point that we pointed out. So in this case, we picked the filter folder Manage Software Filters, and we show that in another interface. I can choose, you can see that the pre-selected ones is filters that I'm already a member of. So I can untick these, and I can go down to packaging tools and select 7-zip, for example. I can also search. So if I want to search for GIMP, for example, I can search in real text to filter out. I can also check only show the selected. So that's useful if you have hundreds of applications, maybe you want to remove one of them. Click show only selected will filter out those. So I click next, we'll get a summary. It will show me what will happen. Yeah, I will add 7-zip, add this computer into the 7-zip filter as a new membership, and I will remove the Brave browser and the Mozilla Firefox. Then I click next, and it tells me filter action was finished successfully, and I can close that. So, okay, so this seems very simple, just putting a computer into a filter. I mean, I could easily do that through the console by just clicking the filter I want to add, especially with this new add to filter functionality that is really nice. But if we look in the background, I will go into when you place your projects, you place them in different folders. So I have my Altiris console integrations in our folder, and here I have my add to software filter. If I click the data folder, you can see that I'm saving every execution of this process like a history table, kind of. So I can see who ordered what to which computer, and also see the status of the running process. So as you can see here, actually, I will open the Altiris agent and show you something. So if I go to task status, we missed it already, but we got a new task and it's installed 7-zip, but it did it with intelligence, with a managed software delivery. If I check the history here, I can see, yeah, the thing I did was I added it to the 7-zip filter. I removed it from Brave browser. I removed it from Firefox. I did a update filter membership for those specific filters. And then I also updated the targets, the specific targets. Once that was done, I sent a run update configuration on the client. So it would immediately get this software installed. And just to be sure, we are waiting 5 minutes and then we're running the update configuration again, just to make sure that if it hadn't gotten it by that time, yeah, we do another update. I also included like a small report showing what are the most popular softwares. And if I hover these, I can see the numbers. I can click them and see a report on the different requests that were made. And yeah, so this is a very simple flow, but it's a good example on what we do daily, like extending other products. In this case, it was Altiris, but we also extend other products, especially if they're web-based, but they don't necessarily need to be. In this case, we opened up a decisions form and extended a different specific product, but it could also be a product that doesn't have a web interface, but we are triggering on if there's a new line in a database, then we fire off a decisions flow that do something, send an assignment to a person that tell them then that you need to do this, or maybe we do something automatically. If we get this new row, we convert it to a CSV file and we dump it to a third system or whatever. If we go into the flow editor, so when I create my products, I mean, yeah, 100% of the times you always create a flow. And this you recognize from workflow. It's quite similar. You have a start step and you have an end step. And the goal is, of course, to end up on the end step and hopefully have no errors on the way. Between the start and end step, you place your steps. In decisions, I'm sorry, in workflow, they're called components, but in decisions, they used to call them steps. And all the steps you have here in your toolbox on the left. So here, I think it's 3,500 steps out of the box that you can use. And it's everything from sending an email, running a SQL query, showing a form, running a rule, or whatever. And if those 3,500 steps are not enough, you also have extra modules or features that you can enable on a server. I'll allow this to load. It takes a little while because it's fetching it. There we go. Up here, you can see the modules that I have installed. And this adds functionality to the decisions platform. So I added the option, the Active Directory integrations. I added the PowerShell. I have some RabbitMQ for message queue capabilities. So decisions can listen to message queues and consume them. They have support for RabbitMQ, ActiveMQ, Azure services. Yeah, there's a few different kinds of services. And also I installed the SAML integration, and this is for authentication to the platform. So it has support for SAML, OAuth, and a few other methods. You can also see there that there is actually a built-in Symantec SMP feature that allows you to communicate with SMP to run tasks and do all that kind of stuff. If I scroll down, maybe you can see something that it would be interesting for you, but there's quite a few modules. So when enabling a new module, new steps will show up in your toolbox. As I told you, the SDK is very powerful. You basically create a C# method and save it as a DLL, and you upload it to decisions. But you could also see, like, if I go to integration in .NET libraries, sometimes it's just enough to install a software on the server, and you could use functionality from that from that software. So for example, here I have Newtonsoft, for example, which is a tool for parsing JSON formats that is added to the server. So I can just browse that library. And these are actually methods that you usually use when you're coding in C#, but we can use them as steps in decisions. We do JSON convert, and we do string serialize object. I can just drag this and drop it in and use .NET methods straight out of the box in decisions. So that's super nice. And that also makes pretty much anything possible. You can basically build whatever you want to, as long as you can do it in C#. Or you could call like built-in .NET classes straight up as steps as well. Okay. So this flow, what we're looking at now, that is the flow that are executed through the SMP console. So the first thing I do is I generate a trustee string. Basically, every time you log into the SMP and run a report, for example, a trustee string is generated for you. And that's basically telling you what you have permissions to use in the console. This is often called scoping, which you create with these, the computer views. And we are using the built-in functionality in SMP to only allow users to edit the computers that they do have permissions to. So we just execute and fetch and see the computer we sent in, can they access it? If they can't, we show them a form. This is a good opportunity to show you the form builder. So the form builder it's kind of like the workflow one, but I would say it's a bit more sophisticated. And the classes, the controls you can use, like date pickers, drop downs and all that, they're more modern maybe than there are in workflow. And also one big thing is you can see in the background here that it's kind of a grid. So you always design your forms with grids. So you say this column should be 25% of the width of the screen, for example. And this means that all forms are scalable. So depending on what resolution you have on your screen, the form will shrink or grow according to that. While in workflow, we had this static canvas that said, yeah, it's 800 by 600 pixels. And no, even if you make the window larger or whatever, then you had a small island in the middle of the page. And so you can make much better looking forms within decisions. If you go through our flow, I want to show you some Altiris integrations. This is a Sql query. So we connected the Altiris database, and basically we're passing a computer GUID into this flow. And here we check, does this computer exist? And does the user have permission to it? Later on, we show the form again. This is the main form, you will recognize it. This is the drop-down list that I had to search in the tree and for the software. And at the end, I will show this summary basically, and that you recognize the filter action was finished successfully. Then I send this off to a synchronous flow. That means that I don't wait for this to finish. I'll tell the user that everything is done, and then this flow runs on its own. And every time I call a flow, I could either call it like this as a synchronous flow that I just fire and forget, or I could have a subflow that I wait until it's done. If I edit it here, I can see what the flow looks like. Anytime, let's say I create a new subflow in my flow here, and I do a run subflow, and I just place it here, and I call this, create a new one, and I call it test. I won't save it. I'm sorry, I won't change it. I will just close down this. And you will see in this form, in this folder I'm in, you can see that I have my test flow. So everything you create within decisions, that like a subflow, a report or something, it is broken out. So you can reuse this in other flows. And reusing a flow is quite simple. Let's go back here and remove it. So if I once again do run subflow and place it on the arrow, oh, sorry, I missed. Instead of create, I just pick existing. And here I can browse and see, I can use any flow anywhere in the decisions platform. So pick the test again, and yeah, that's another way to do it. This also brings us to, since we're in the editor here, you will, if you have an experience with workflow, this will be nothing new to you. You create your steps. The debugger, I need to show you that because I think it's really nice. And as I told you, this flow expects a computer GUID as an input. So I'll just go to all computers. And I pick up my computer. Let's do properties. So I input this as input. I can, if I want to, save this as a data sample. So it will be saved here on the left page. So I don't need to type in this computer GUID every time I want to debug. Then I can just find the sample data, click the arrow, and go ahead and start my debugging. And the debugger will run in the background. It will fire off the form. You can see the orange line tells me it went this path. I can, at any time, let's see if I want to see my trustee string. I can right-click the component, choose the execution. The reason why it says execution 1 is because if you have a step in a loop and it's executed 30 times, then you will have 30 executions. You can check any of the executions you want to see. So I click View Output Data. I will see that this subflow in this case returned a trustee string, which is generated by the SMP. And then I execute this SQL that checks for the computer. And this also has inputs. The first one did not have any inputs to that flow, but this step has inputs. I can choose either input data, output data, or both. So I can see that I sent in the computer GUID, I sent in my trustee scope, and this returned a list of computers. In this case, it's only one computer. I can see the values. So this is super nice when you're debugging your flows. And in workflow, you could do something similar, but you had to add breakpoints to your debugging. And then you would see all data, and often it was quite much data, and you would need to find the correct one. Here you just select which step you want to see and check the output data, so you can follow it through the flow. So if I go ahead here and I untick 7-zip, click next, it will show me once again the summary or the confirmation, and close. And I can follow and see that it took the correct path. This is super nice. Sometimes, though, you have live flows that are running in your environment. So if I close this down, you have something called a global debugger. And by using this, you can see data from flows running on this server in real time. So let me see. Yeah, okay. This is a bug, of course, because I'm doing a demo. But usually you can see them, click them and see the same way as you do in the normal debugger. You can see the global debugger. And this is especially useful when you have like asynchronous flows, because the debugger will not follow the asynchronous flow and debug them. Then you would need to open the global debugger. As I told you, there was a module or a feature that you could install that communicates with the Altiris SMP. Sometimes, though, that is not enough, because there are quite many web services in the SMP. Not all of them are even documented. But if you want to call a web service, Altiris web service, I'll show you a real simple way to do that. So I have another project that I called Altiris Shared Integrations. This project contains all the stuff that I most likely will reuse in multiple different processes. So instead of creating it in each of the different processes I create, I place them here in this project. So here I have all my Altiris web service calls. So if I go to, sorry, let's see if I can move this bar. Yeah, I could, great. So here we can see my SMP server and the Altiris ASDK NS item management service. This item management service is the way to like create or remove items from Altiris. So if I would like to delete a computer, I can just call the method delete item. So, and here I can see all the different methods, and if I click them, I also see how can I use them, and you can test them out by pasting item GUID in there. But for now, I want to do this through decision, so I just copy the URL. I go back here. When you are in a folder, you have all these options here in the top where you can create a flow, create a rule, a form, etc. So I click create data types integration. I do external services. And here you can see I have options for, depending on what features I have installed, of course, but I have a web service reference, OData service reference, REST service, and Open API service reference. But in this case, I want to do a web service reference. So I want to call this something. I'll do that after I paste this URL. And I actually call it the same as the service is called in Altiris. That makes it easy for me. I can specify a VSDL. That's basically a recipe telling decisions what kind of data this web service will return or what I can pass into it. So I'll tick that and it will propose this for me, and this looks great. So I'll just save my web service. And there we go, it's generated. So now I have my item management service here. So if I want to use that, let's go back in here and open up the flow we were looking at. If I would like to do something with an item in Altiris, I scroll down to integration. I scroll down to web services, and here all my web services I added to the system are listed. And here we have my item management service. So I just expand this. Let's see if it's, yeah, there we go. And here you can see all the stuff that we saw in this list are added here. So if I take the delete item, for example, drops it on the line, and we have an input called item GUID. So I just send in the item GUID I want to remove, and yeah, we're done basically. That is super simple. As you saw, I did not need to compile anything like an integration project or something. Everything is available almost on the fly. The same thing goes for if we do, I can go to the integrations folder here. And if we want to integrate with a REST API. So I have here a REST API that checks the weather for a specific city in a specific country. And then I send in a key that identifies as me. So if I would like to call this REST API from decisions, I go to create data types integrations, external services, and do a REST service this time. So I call this call weather data. The service URL, that's usually, you can do pretty much however you want to, but usually you put in the service URL as the path to where all the methods are available. So this is a method called weather, so it gets the weather. There are some other methods you can use as well. So, but I'll paste this URL. I can show advanced options. Here we can add additional HTTP headers. Some REST APIs require these for authentication, for example. If they have some other kind of authentication, I can choose them here as well, like basic authentication and stuff like that. But for now, I'll just save integration. So now I created a new web service. Well, not a caller, but here we have my service. If I click that one, I go to all, and click Add Method to Service. So first here you recognize the URL. Then I paste the second part of the query. Copy that, and I call this get weather by city. All right, but I don't want to check, in this case, Lerum, Sweden, every time I run this. So I'll add some variables by adding these curly brackets. So this is city. I replace Sweden with country. Oh, sorry. I want to replace my key. So I'll actually cut that, and I'll add something called a key. And I don't need to, I'll use the get method. You can also, of course, do posts and puts and deletes and everything. And you can even specify some web service they don't follow, like the standard methods of sending in data. So you can specify different methods as well. The same goes here. If you want to override the advanced options from the main service, you can do specific for this specific method and add headers for them or override authentication. But I'll just click OK. And we can actually create a new flow here, create flow, and we call this get weather. Now I scroll down in my toolbox to integration, and this time I select REST services. And here we have cold weather data. Did I call it like that? Yeah, I did. Get weather by city. You see all my methods would show up under here. So if I had a get weather by, I don't know, coordinates, maybe I would add another method for that. Drag it, connect it, do a done. And here you can see that my variables I created, they pop up as inputs. So if I do a constant and I do Lerum and a constant called Sweden, and a constant with the key, usually I place this in something called a system variable or a constant that you can use in any flow. But in this case, I'll just hard code it. And I'll debug this. And as you can see, even though my flow is broken, I can still debug it. And you can see it went into get weather by city and it exited on done. It was very quick. And if I check the input output data, you can see I sent in Lerum, Sweden, the key, and also here is the result from this web service. So we could probably see, okay, no, here is actually the result. But this is in a JSON format right now, and it's not very easy to work with. We would need to parse text files and doing all kinds of stuff. So what I do is I copy this. Okay, I close my flow. Save. Now I want to create a JSON parser. So I click again on create data types integration, and here I go to XML, JSON, CSV. And here I can create types from JSON. So I call this weather, yes, or whatever, call it like that. I just paste my JSON string in here. Just to be sure, and click create. And now decisions will generate data types that I can use in my flows from this JSON string. All right, if I go in back to my cold weather data, I can click on get weather by city, edit this. And here we can select which output type we want to use. And by default, it's raw value, so it just sends out the text. But here, instead, I can select data type. Now I search for my weather rest type that I just created. And I click OK. And now this step will output that type instead. So we go back to our test flow. Oh, sorry, it's not, it's the weather, get weather flow. And we debug this. And let's see. Maybe I was too quick. We had a fail. It actually worked. So here we can see it in a more structured way. So I have the longitude and latitude, that is Lerum. I got the weather, it's clouds. I should see the temperatures as well, and humidity and all that stuff. So it's super simple to integrate with a REST API through decisions. Another thing that is quite popular is using, when a lot of workflow customers we have, they are using workflow as a service for other stuff. It could be PowerShell scripts, for example. Let's say you have a deployment of computers and you want to, you don't want to have credentials in the script that can connect to the database or whatever, or maybe even call the API. So instead you call a workflow without any credentials, and you elevate the permissions by running the SQL command through that web service. So if we would take a look at that in decisions, we would go to integration, and here we have database, and I already added the Symantec CMDB database. If I open that, I have the view that is called the Computer EX. Those of you who have worked with workflow or scripting towards Altiris, you probably recognize the Computer EX view. It basically contains all the computers in S&P environment. So I use the step get all from the Computer EX. The only input I have to this is a limit. So if I want to limit the results, but I ignore that for now, I just go ahead. And first I'll just run this and see that it works. If I click check the output, you will see this is a JSON array, which with all the computers I have in my environment. Okay, so let's say I want to make this available as a web service for a script to run or another system. I'll just connect the failed one here. The only thing I need to do is on the output. Here I can either specify which outputs I want to send, or I can pick it from the list. And if I click my get all from vComputer, if you check here on the outputs, I can see that the variable that is sent out is the vComputer EX result. So I can also just click on that variable. All right, so now this flow will send out that, that list of computers. But I haven't told decisions that this should be available as a REST API for other services to use. And the way I do that is by clicking Configure integration up here. I select which type of integration this is, and this is an API service. Data format, I can specify if I want to return a specific data format, but I'll just allow all here. So it's up to the consumer to decide. I can select what should be the path. Should I access it by ID or path? And if I do, if I can leave it like that and click override service URL, and then I can specify here. So get all Altiris computers. And this will be the URL that you can access this web service on. So I click done. And to test this out, I can click view. And it will open up, if you're familiar with Swagger. So this is like an example page showing you what you should expect to return from this web service. You can also try it out. So, and okay, we just run this right now with a post or get or put, it doesn't matter. So when I run this, you will see the results as a JSON string. And that's how easy it is to publish a decisions workflow as a service. All right. One thing, Hans, I'm sorry, how many minutes do I still have? So 10 minutes?
Yeah, I think you should have at least 10 more minutes. Great.
Then I want to show you.
But Kenny, maybe leave 2 or 3 at least for a question if it comes any questions.
Yeah, sure.
Oh.
I want to show a more business-focused example of, let's see, while this is starting up. This is a flow that is created for a fictional insurance company. So we'll just let this, give it a few seconds to start up. And this is a local virtual machine I'm running in my local computer. So as you see, decisions is not very resource intense unless you have thousands of clients talking to it, of course. But then we have the scalability. So you could easily, and while this is starting up, I can just show you, if you want to download decisions and run it locally, you can do that by going to releases.decisions.com. And I would recommend you to download the version 7. You can download this and run it. You have a 7-day trial. After the trial expires, you can still use it locally on your computer. So that means that all external requests to the decision server is prohibited, but you can still run it and develop on it or test it out. All right, so let's see, this should be started up now, so I should be able to log on. There we go. Yeah, so this is an older version of decisions. That's why it looks a little bit different, but the flow is still relevant. So this is an example for a fictional insurance company that insures musical instruments. So I'll just fire this off right now, this apply now through the portal. And we are simulating an end user requesting an insurance. So the first form is nothing strange. I'll just type in my address. And here I did a small integration to an open REST API on the web that basically checks the postcode and fetches the city and region by default. Not much is happening on this form. So I click continue. But here is the main form where you need to select which instrument you want to insure. So I'll just pick guitar in this case. Keep your eyes on this estimated premium, as this will change depending on what type of instrument and the cost of it. So I'll do a solid body electric. I say this is made in year 2000, and it's a Giegersson, and it's a Les Paul guitar. And I bought this for 200,000. It's a very expensive. And as you can see, the premium is automatically updated depending on what price I'm typing in. And the replacement cost is 150,000. And this will be extremely expensive. It even tells me that this is more expensive than the average cost of the usual music instruments. I store it at the studio, kept in a hard shell case, and it's also played professionally. And finally, they want me to upload a photo of the instrument so they can inspect to see the condition of it. So I'll do like this. I'll pick a key harp. It's a very Swedish instrument. So I'll upload that. And decisions will tell me this is a very low confidence that this image is a guitar. So I'll remove that and I actually upload a guitar. And it tells me I'm 93.7% confident that this image is a guitar. And what's going on here is we created an integration to Google Vision. So this is their image AI or machine learning tool that recognize different images and can tell you what type of what it is on the image. In this case, we send in, we think this is a guitar, and it returns to us the percentage or the how confident it is that it is or isn't a guitar. So as you can see, I can do real-time lookups, database lookups, REST API lookups, anything like that within the forms. So the forms are very, very powerful. You can basically do anything within the forms. You can also set timers, or you could have triggers. If something happens, something should refresh, etc. So there's basically no limitations to what you can do. I click continue, and my application has been submitted and will be reviewed. And the way this flow works is it's assigned to someone internally. So in this case, it first goes to the policy admin. If I click the policy admin, here we have a dashboard for the policy admin. They can see some trends, they can see some diagrams, and here is my new requests. So they can right click and they can review the application. And then you will see anything that the user has filled in. They can adjust the premium if they think the premium is not correct, or they can approve or deny it straight up. So yeah, let's go ahead and approve this. The next step in this flow is that the task is passed to the underwriters. They have a different dashboard that they work with. So basically, they will get an email if we want to, telling them that they have a new request. They could either approve it or deny it straight through the email by replying to it, or they could go in here to their dashboard and see the open tickets. So if we take this is our request. They can also see like an overview where we currently are in the process. So you see the first, it was apply, that was created by the end user. Review was done by the policy admin, and now we're currently on the underwriter. So they can go ahead and do the same thing. They can do review application, and they can also see all the contents. They can approve or deny it. We also generate automatically a PDF. So I open this up. Yeah, it's open. And we dynamically generated a PDF with all the contents of this request. So that's also an example how you can do something that, well, there are some integrations, some technical stuff in here, but you can also use it as a pure like tracking manual tasks and assigning them to different peoples. And that is quite powerful. We have done a lot of these different like non-technical flows as well. And this could be interesting for the rest of the business, not only the IT. Are there any questions regarding this? So we could do that last minutes, because currently I have shown you what I wanted to show you. I mean, we haven't even touched on reports, or we haven't shown you how to create these dashboards, and there's a lot of other integrations you can do. And yeah, this is a huge project. You can do pretty much anything you want to, but the good thing is you can start small and begin with flows and doing simpler things. Then you can add on more stuff to it.
But Kenny, why should we use decisions instead of, for instance, Power Automate?
First off, Power Automate is super expensive. You get to pay per user and per flow. And that really adds up. And it also adds like an inhibitor to creating new flows, because you know there's a cost related to every new flow you create. In this case, it's you pay it, and then you can use it how much you want to. Power Automate is it's not very dynamic. You have the tools and the steps that they provided for you, and if you want to do something outside of that box, you're pretty much out of luck. Then you would need to generate your own web service on the side, maybe you can call that, and that web service you write a C# or a Python script that actually execute the integrations. So it's more faced towards end users, where a worker can go in and create their own daily routines as a process. This is more of an enterprise and back-end business or IT technical kind of flows.
Yeah. And price-wise, I had that question in the chat as well. The thing is that, as James also mentioned, is that Workflow Solutions is included with every enterprise license, and we use it for. I think every one of our customers have something built in Workflow today. Would you say? Can you agree on that? Every Altiris customer at least, and even
Absolutely.
some of the SEP customers as well. But some of them felt that that's not enough, and what we got a help from Decisions to do is to create a specific pricing for just Altiris customers, because it should be too expensive to use Decisions if we didn't do that, because it's a really powerful tool. But they really wanted more people using the product in the way that we do with the Workflow today. So that's the reason why. So if you want to get more information about that, just reach out to us.
Yeah, if you're not already using Workflow solution, you should, because I think it's Broadcoms or Symantec's best kept secret. It's a wonderful tool, and it's a great stepping stone for. As I said, Decisions is the second step, the next step of the workflow. If you want to take it broader, maybe you want to allow a public user accessing a flow. I'm not sure I would do that with Workflow, but Decisions is basically built for it. And the same thing for, it's more easy to use, I would say, for someone that isn't as technical, because you have everything in the web browser. You don't need to think that much about data types unless you do integrations. So you can, one of the best SEs on Decisions, she's a math teacher and she had no previous computer experience. So you can become very good at it without having an IT background.
That said, she's really smart though.
Yeah, she is, of course. She used to be a math teacher, so.
Yeah, and we know that those are really, really smart. James, did you have anything more that you wanted to add? Also to the
I was going to mention, first of all, Kenny, that was amazing. I learned so much from watching you present on some of the ways that you guys are using Decisions to do some really cool things. I specifically like that filter query generator. That was amazing. The methods that you're using and the way you're kind of showcasing the interaction and capability of this extensible platform, right? A lot of the original, you could almost see some of the original DNA of Workflow and some of the components as you were showing it. And the way that they've sort of exposed some of the web service data layer files that you were showing, the easy methods for importing those things. As an early user of Workflow, WSDL files were my component connection, right? I can build on my appendage points. And for those of you who are following along, if you have Workflow solution in your architecture, you can actually use it to build these branch service architectures. From a Broadcom perspective, what I'm excited about is we look at the methods we use for integrating with other platforms, both from a Symantec product perspective, but then from the Broadcom software group perspective, which includes a lot of legacy products from CA's identity management side of the business, our identity management side of our legacy Symantec cybersecurity business. All of these service offerings are being combined and integrated. And so from a customer perspective, it gives you some optional integration points to start taking, from Kenny's point, a lot of these specific processes that we have that may seem unique to our business. You can take this to Zitac and say, please help us automate this, right? And so having a partner that has that kind of experience is incredibly valuable for your community. So I'm really excited to see what you guys are doing with those tools. Thanks so much.
And we will show you for sure. That's for sure. Thank you a lot, Kenny, for your presentations. And if there's any more questions, I maybe can have a time to get that in the end as well. And of course, you can always reach out to us and we can set up a demo or however we can help. Now I want to have Niklas on the line as well. Is that possible?
Yeah, I am here.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much. Same. Glad you joined us.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found the reason why I couldn't join, but that's a later story though, because I don't want to take your time with it.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to hand over and tell us the story. Why are actually SEP customers today moving over to SES-Complete? And why are they moving to the cloud?
So, I mean, yeah, before the presentation, it's a good idea to talk about it. But many of our customers are moving parts of their security or entire security stacks to the cloud because most of the users are no longer in the office, right? And if you have a lot of different offices and stuff like that, and you have an on-prem server, you need to backhaul all that traffic. And for large customers, that can be extremely expensive, both VPN licenses, but also in bandwidth, right? And the second thing is the flexibility and agility it gives us to deploy new features and functions, but also new signatures and patterns and protection technology, right? Because, I mean, if we just take the latest ones that we all read about, Sunburst and whatnot is coming out. I mean, we don't have 3 to 4 hours anymore. We have 3 to 4 seconds. So if we see something going on in US, we need to push that everywhere. And cloud is, I mean, it's quicker. We have more compute power up there than we can get on a server on-prem.
Yeah, and we're seeing that in every business today. So why not security also?
Yeah.
Great answer. Thank you. So then you're going to answer also why are we looking at the same distance? Why are the SEP customers upgrading to SES-Complete today? What's in it for them?
I'll actually have a picture of that in the presentation, but it's the ability to move to the cloud or run a hybrid environment, really. So if you want to have, for example, your servers being managed on-prem and your workforce being managed from the cloud, then that's perfectly possible. The second one is look, people are starting to protect their mobile phones. There's a lot of unprotected mobile phones and iPads and then whatever it is out there, and they are perfect jump hosts. Typically, they do not, well, a corporate iPad or a phone is of course sensitive, but they use it to jump or spread malware to be able to get to other resources. Because most of the time they contain Java. And Java is very nice to use to jump further and further. And from SEP to SES-Complete, you also get all the features and functions that we do have that many of our customers is not using. So EDR, endpoint detection and response. We have something called adaptive protection, where instead of trying to have the same protection for all our customers, we tailor it for that customer. So yeah, that's I think in SES-Complete is it's great value, both protection wise and money wise.
Great. So roll.
Let me share my screen and see if everything is working here. Can we see the screen here?
Oh yeah.
Good.
Perfect.
Good.
Thank you.
So, and as we were talking about, right, the SEP license still exists. Huge amount of our customers still running this, but we realized that we need to be able to move to the cloud. We need to follow our customers around. We can't say where the customer should be or not should be. So therefore, we have the SES Enterprise and the SES-Complete package. And Complete contains all of our newer technologies. It contains the endpoint detection and response. It contains technology that we bought about 3 years ago called Javelin Networks. It's now called Threat Defense for Active Directory. So there's an agent protecting the computers and also having a look at the Active Directory to make sure that's fine. adaptive protection, application control, all of that is being managed from the cloud. And some of the features are being presented if you want to run SES-Complete on-prem. And some of them do require a hybrid connection or a cloud management. And that's just because the compute power needed to run all of these technologies in the background. So, I mean, we still have, it's the same agent, and our agent has I mean, it's an extremely good agent. It has a lot of different layers, because what the recent attacks have shown us is it's not one bullet to protect against everything. Now we need all these different features or security layers to be able to block certain things happening. For example, I mean, the IPS today is extremely useful, and it has been for the last, I don't know, 10 years, because we can stop vulnerabilities. So bad things coming in from the network, even though we don't have a technology to block the threat, we actually can create a signature to block the attack. So it is really powerful with all these different ones. One of the latest things we added in is actually a script emulator. So we already have an emulator for executing files, but now we're also doing it for scripts. So before you're running your PowerShell or Java, whatever it is, we are just emulating it in a small sandbox that we have created, just trying to see what it does. And if it's doing something suspicious, we can block it, or we can just log it and then let it run. But it gives you the ability to actually see what's going on, or see what will be executing before it's actually happening. So therefore we can block certain things. All of these are available on-prem and in the cloud at the moment, depending on, you know, what license you have. Some of the features might not be there. If you don't have Complete, you don't have the EDR, for example. You don't have the Active Directory breach protection. But it's the same agent. It's just, you know, if you're connecting to a cloud console or you're connecting to your on-prem console. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about the new features that is available. So Threat Defense for Active Directory has been around for our on-prem solution for quite some time. It's coming today, well, tonight, for our cloud console. And what it does, it's actually two parts. So the first part is looking at your Active Directory domain, because, you know, fact is most ADs have been around for 20, 25 years. They've been upgraded, oh, a fallback, and then upgraded again. And there's a lot of old stuff in there. So the first part here will scan your AD, look for configurational security stuff, and also accounts that are, you know, are they old, or do they have passwords that are 20 years old? And they'll give you a report. So with Microsoft recommendations, but also Symantec recommendations and other security recommendations on, now it's probably time for you to update the password for your Kerberos ticket engine. It's, you know, anything to help out with that. The second part is actually both reactive and proactive. So we will obfuscate data when somebody is trying to get knowledge about your Active Directory domain. So typically, you know, when they get access to a machine, they will start looking around. They will try to get higher privileges. So an example is if we have 10 domain admins without Threat Defense for Active Directory, but somebody is doing commands or writing commands to actually check the domain admins, we will fake the numbers and maybe show them 1,000 instead. Because if we can slow them down and going from, you know, the worst case scenarios we have seen is actually taking over a complete company in 6 minutes. But if we can slow that down to 40 minutes, it gives you time to actually see what's going on, and it gives you a lot more information about who, where, and what. So if they have 1,000 domain admins all of a sudden, the chances are they're going to hit the wrong one or the right one is really slim. And as soon as we see somebody is trying to, run a command on a machine that doesn't exist, or trying to get privileges from a domain user or domain admin that doesn't exist, first and foremost, we get an alert, but we can also automate protection about that. So if we see that, we can terminate the process, or we can actually kick out the user, and we can put them in quarantine. Then we know something is going on with this machine. Of course, this is configurable, let IT department do their PowerShell commands, but normal users shouldn't be doing it. Second part is endpoint detection and response, or EDR. I think one of the strange things with EDR in late discussions have been EDR, and everybody's saying you need an EDR. So for Symantec, protection is always first. There is no other way to do security in what we say. I mean, we need to block first. That's the most important thing. The second thing is actually visibility or logging it. So the EDR is a way to show what has happened, or what went wrong, or whatever it might be, but it's showing us all the information except keystrokes actually on a machine that is going on all the time. So it will show us, as you can see, file creations, process launches, PowerShells being run, what was the commands in those PowerShells, anything going on really. And it's a lot of data. It is a humongous amount of data coming in. So what we're doing, we're actually storing data on the clients. And if something happens, something suspicious is there, it will automatically fill the data into the server, or you can actually manually ask for it. But built for bigger environments, let's say you have 1,000 machines sending data in real time. That's perfectly fine. But let's say you have 50,000, 100,000, or 200,000 machines. Then it becomes quite cumbersome for your network. And 200,000 might sound huge, but if we start thinking about this from an EDR, XDR perspective, we're looking at, you can look at emails, you can look at mobile phones, you can look at your server payload. It's a lot of machines in the end. So we need to figure out how to actually manage all that data. We have something called targeted attack analytics. So basically we are running all our patterns and signatures on our customers' data in the background. So if we find something on one customer, we will run it in the background on all of our customers. What we'll then do is we'll actually combine all that data, because customer one might have seen one thing from I'm just saying Stuxnet here because it's so well known, but let's say one customer sees one file from Stuxnet. Customer two sees a process and another file. So if we combined all that data and we use AI and machine learning on it, and then we also put a human being on it, because then we can run all that signatures on the combined data that Symantec has in store and say, hey, you know what? We actually found something here that they have not sent in any data regarding this, but with all this data from all of our customers, we actually found that this customer over here have had this file for the last 6 months. So we're actually going to give them a call and help them threat hunt that and see if that is something malicious or it might be just something benign. We're also using all this data to enrich our incidents. So when you have an incident, and if we find more evidence in the background, we will send that automatically into your incident. So you'll get more and more information on what's going on. The last thing, and this is what we talked about, adaptive protection, is actually we're taking data from the EDR from our customer and starting to look at what's going on. So we're looking at different attacks, different malwares. How are they using this? How are they accessing or getting access to a computer? And what we're looking at is trying to find what products or what applications are mostly used in the attacks, and how is that compared to your organization? Are you guys using, I'm going to use PowerShell as an example, but if you guys are using PowerShell, are you using all the features and functions of PowerShell? So we can actually go in and shut down different features and different applications if you want to, but we're going to do that in a secure way. So we're going to analyze your environment, compare it to the data we have, and then say, you know what, we can see that somebody is running PowerShell and they're using obfuscated commands. That's shady. It's this machine. We recommend you actually deny this, but go and talk to the person. So we're going to give you recommendations. We're going to do a new evaluation of the data you have every 24 hours and give you a recommendation and say, hey, we found a new application here. It's pretty bad, so we recommend you deny it. But we also see there's 10 users that is using this way. So it might be something in a work process, or it might be that, you know, somebody's using an application you didn't know about. But it's all about reducing the attack surface and preventing living off the land attacks, because, you know, there are 40 to 50 applications that are more seen than others. And that's what we're trying to do. This feature is available on-prem if you have a hybrid connector or in the cloud. So it's all about getting the right security for you and not to all of the customers that Symantec have. So that was very quick.
Really the short version.
Yeah, it was really the short version. And this is just to show you the last example, right? Just for Excel, there are 20 different behaviors that we can go in and block or allow or monitor. But sadly, this is what it's coming down to. I mean, they're using our programs against us. And I have a lot of customers that say, why don't you just block PowerShell? We can't block PowerShell. It's an amazing tool, right? But it's being used in a bad way.
Yeah, thank you. I would like us to kind of finish up this session and say thank you, Niklas. I haven't received any questions so far from the audience, but one summary I was thinking about, and that's also on what you told us earlier, is that one thing to move to the cloud, that gives us speed.
Yeah.
Speed to address the problems that are occurring before they really have an impact on the organization, because you can do it on the behalf of the customer.
Yeah.
But does every SES-Complete customer get the opportunity to get the warnings from your teams that something is going on in your environment? Is that a part of the basic offering?
Yes, it is. It's actually it is something we have been doing for customers that only has SEP as well.
Yeah.
The issue here is customer needs to send in telemetry. If they don't, we can't see what's going on.
Yeah.
And telemetry is anonymized. There's a hashed customer value or a license value, really. So we don't know. We can find out, but that requires a lot of internal processes to be going through so we can actually contact somebody.
I think it's great. It's really great to hear. And also one thing I heard internally from one of our consultants within this area, who is working a lot with SES-Complete also, is ease of use. And he said it's partly working against him, because if it's easier to use and you get more functionality out of the box, he has less to do. So it's he's kind of considering that, but he said it's really a help, and it makes a lot of sense to the customers.
Yeah, and we have been trying to simplify it, because I mean the on-prem server has been around for quite some time. It's more than 10 years now, and so it's a new look and feel, and we try to simplify it. There's still, you can still drill down, but if you're not interested in that, everything is turned on and trying to stay as simple as possible.
Yeah.
But we're trying to move away from the possibility that customer need to enable functions and features. Everything is enabled because we actually need all this security today.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Thanks a lot, Niklas, as always.
Thank you.
Great presentation.